Welcome back. It's day 67, if you can believe it. Oh, we are just really flying through the Bible here. Thanks for coming back again. Mandy and I always love to see you. Today we're going to do Matthew 26 to 28. We're going to finish Matthew today, if you can believe it. And these three chapters are sad because it deals with the crucifixion of Jesus, but it ends with the resurrection. But anyway, up till now, Matthew's been exciting because Jesus has been healing and preaching and going around. And now we're going to get into Holy Week. And remember, I love to color verses I love in Matthew in green because it's part of the gospel section, which has 117 chapters, and Matthew has 28 chapters. Matthew chapter 26, the plot against Jesus. When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, "As you know, the Passover is 2 days away, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the elders of the people assembled in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas. And they plotted to arrest Jesus in some sly way and kill him, but not during the feast, they said, or there may be a riot among the people. Jesus anointed at Bethany. While Jesus was in Bethany, the home of a man known as Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. "Why this waste?" they asked. "This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor." Aware of this, Jesus said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. I tell you the truth, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." My note says, she gave her all, anointed her king, and risked public rebuke. So when this woman came in this room, she came in a room with all men. That was risky right there. Then she came in and anointed Jesus. And everyone was saying, well, why didn't we sell this and give the money to the poor? Like trying to make, oh, we're so good, we're going to give money to the poor. But what she did was an honorable thing. And I love what Jesus says here. I'm going to read this line again. I tell you the truth, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. So instead of scolding her, Jesus is giving like a blessing to her. He's saying, everyone's going to remember you from now to the end of time. And Matthew wrote this down, and so we are. We are talking about it right now. What an honorable thing she did. And so I just hope that when people serve other people, don't nitpick them. I mean, here she was doing a great thing, and all they could do is criticize her. So people might not serve Jesus and serve other people in the most perfect way, or what you might think is not the right way, but you don't know what God's doing in their life. Jesus said what she did was honorable and will be told of her for generations. And of course, the guys are in there too, with their nitpicking. We're hearing about that for generations too. So I just want to say, get out there and serve, and don't criticize other people who are serving, because we're all just called to serve in the best way that we can. Judas agrees to betray Jesus. Then one of the 12, the one named Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 silver coins. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. The Lord's Supper. On the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to make preparations for you to eat the Passover?" He replied, "Go into the city to a certain man and tell him, 'The teacher says, my appointed time is near. I am going to celebrate the Passover with my disciples at your house.' So the disciples did as Jesus directed them and prepared the Passover. When evening came, Jesus was reclining at the table with the 12. And while they were eating, he said, 'I tell you the truth, one of you will betray me.' They were very sad and began to say to him, one after the other, 'Surely not I, Lord.' Jesus replied, 'The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man will go, just as it is written about him. But woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born.' Then Judas, the one who would betray him, said, 'Surely not I, Rabbi?' Jesus answered, 'Yes, it is you.' While they were eating, Jesus took the bread, gave thanks and broke it, and gave it to his disciples, saying, 'Take and eat. This is my body.' Then he took the cup, gave thanks, and offered it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many, for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until the day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom." When they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Let's read a commentary about how he instituted the Lord's Supper. Then Jesus instituted what would become an ordinance of the church, communion, or the Lord's Supper. See 1 Corinthians 11. The bread represents his body, and the cup represents his blood, which was about to be poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Jesus' blood would establish the new covenant, the special agreement that God made with the church through the sacrificial death and resurrection of his Son. Jesus vowed that he would not drink with his disciples again until his earthly millennial kingdom. Until then, the church is to commemorate the work and spiritual presence of the true Passover lamb by remembering him and proclaiming him through communion. Jesus predicts Peter's denial. Then Jesus told them, "This very night you will all fall away on account of me, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee." Peter replied, "Even if all fall away on account of you, I never will." "I tell you the truth," Jesus answered. "This very night, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. Peter declared, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And all the other disciples said the same. Gethsemane. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to the disciples and found them sleeping. "Could you men not watch with me for 1 hour?" He asked Peter. "Watch and pray, so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak." He went away for the 2nd time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the 3rd time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour is near, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." I have a note here for the Gethsemane part. He asked for their help. He needed their support. Jesus was about to be separated from God and experience sin for the first time, which would be painful. And then it's sad too, when Jesus went off to pray, he took his innermost circle, right? Peter, James, and John, he took them and he said, "Watch." He was looking for help and support, but they couldn't even stay awake. But I know they had been through a lot and, had walked a lot into the town and everything, but they just couldn't keep their eyes open. And I just hope that we can learn from that we can be a good friend to people. When people say, "I need you," that we can be there and be a faithful friend. Jesus arrested. While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus replied, "Friend, do what you came for." Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. With that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. "Put your sword back in its place," Jesus said to him, "for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say, it must happen in this way? And I have that the disciples were tired with prayer, but Jesus was strengthened with prayer, which is why Jesus could face the arrest with calmness and peace. At that time, Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have to come with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. But this all has taken place, that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. So interesting, right? Peter thought he was going to be brave. He said, even if everyone else leaves you, Lord, I won't leave you. But then he did, and he betrayed him 3 times. And you just think, wow, that's a lot of times. But we betray God in our lives all the time. Jesus before the Sanhedrin. Then those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, 2 came forward and declared, "This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days." Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent. The high priest said to him, "I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. "But I say to all of you, in the future you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" "He is worthy of death," they answered. Then they spit in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him and said, "Prophesy to us, Christ. Who hit you?" Peter disowns Jesus. Now, Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. "You were also with Jesus of Galilee," she said. But he denied it before them all. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another girl saw him, and said to the people there, "This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth." He denied it again with an oath. "I don't know the man." After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, "Surely you were one of them. Your accent gives you away." Then he began to call down curses on himself, and he swore to them, "I don't know the man." Immediately a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the words Jesus had spoken, "Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. There's a lot of sadness in that chapter. First, they fall asleep when he asks them to pray. Then when he's arrested, they all flee. Then Peter comes and tries to kind of watch, and he denies him 3 times. Judas betrays him for 30 silver coins. I mean, what has happened? These disciples were with him for 3 years. They were doing so well. But it just shows that when the pressure's on, we can do crazy things. That's why it's so important to have a strong faith in Jesus. They were a little confused and scared, and I would have been scared too. I mean, this man that you love, your rabbi that you followed, now he's going to be arrested, and they're probably thinking they're going to be next. But that's why it's so important to read his word every day, to have really strong faith. So when hard times come, we don't flee. Not only would one of them betray him, but all of them would fall away, just as Scripture foretold. When Peter forcibly vowed to stick with Jesus until the end, Jesus zeroed in on Peter's approaching fall. He would deny Jesus that night before the rooster crowed 3 times. Peter didn't believe such a thing could happen, but he clearly didn't know himself very well. The omniscience of Jesus saw where the dangerous pride of Peter would lead. Pride comes before destruction, and an arrogant spirit before a fall. And finally, meanwhile, Peter had cautiously followed at a distance and sat in the priest's courtyard to await the outcome. There he had 3 opportunities to affirm his commitment to the Lord. First, a servant accused him of being associated with Jesus. Then another woman claimed he was one of his followers. Lastly, several other people indicated him as being a disciple of Jesus. On each occasion, Peter's courage collapsed as he vehemently denied it with curses and oaths. Immediately a rooster crowed, and Peter remembered Jesus' prediction. Knowing he had failed the Lord, he broke down and wept bitterly. Though Peter had boasted of his willingness to die for Jesus, God mercifully revealed to him the true condition of his heart, and Peter responded with tears of repentance. And I think that's the key right there. We can all say, oh, look, Peter denied Jesus 3 times, but we denied Jesus too. How many times are we in a crowd of people or somebody talks and we have the chance to talk about Jesus, or maybe they're talking about something spiritual and we don't chime in, or we kind of turn the conversation another way? We all deny Jesus as well. I have as well too. But the neat thing is what he said at the end. When Peter realized that, he wept bitterly. He was sorry. He just didn't keep saying, I don't know him, I'm not part of the disciples, kept pushing people away. He realized, oh my goodness, what Jesus predicted actually happened. I did deny him, and he wept bitterly. And that's what I take away from this. We are all going to mess up, but the important thing is to tell God that we are sorry. Matthew 27, Judas hangs himself. Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people came to the decision to put Jesus to death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 silver coins to the chief priests and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied. That's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. I have here, he tried to please the priests who were in power, but they rejected Judas. And right there is a big difference. What did we just see in the chapter before? Peter denied Jesus, but when he realized he did it, he wept bitterly, and he was sorry for that. Judas also betrayed Jesus, but he wasn't sorry. In the end, he hung himself. I think if he would have gone to Jesus, Jesus would have forgiven him, because Jesus always forgives, but he just chose to take his life. And so I hope that for all of us, when we're in a really bad time and maybe we've messed up really, really bad, I want you to remember, my friends, there's always hope and there's always forgiveness in Jesus. If you ask, he will forgive no matter what sin you've done. If you truly are repentant, Jesus will forgive you. The chief priests picked up the coins and said, "It is against the law to put this into the treasury, since it is blood money." So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 silver coins, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used it to buy the potter's field, as the Lord commanded. Okay, look at all those details that were prophesied and then came to be. I mean, you just cannot argue that the Bible is not inspired by God. Jesus before Pilate. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you?" But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the feast to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who was called the Christ?" For he knew it was out of envy that they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message, "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called the Christ?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. "It is your responsibility." All the people answered, "Let his blood be on us and our children." Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. This is so sad. The chief priests were determined to kill Jesus. They persuaded the crowds to demand the release of Barabbas and the crucifixion of Jesus. And at this point, Pilate must have been like, what is going on? This seems so crazy. He thought, I'll offer them a choice because surely they'll say Jesus should be released, right? But they're wanting Jesus crucified. To avoid a riot over the matter, Pilate washed his hands in front of the crowd to symbolize that he had nothing to do with Jesus' condemnation and was innocent of his blood. Some people today try to follow a similar course. They attempt to withhold judgment about Jesus, thinking they can take a middle road. But Jesus said, "Anyone who is not with me is against me." There is no neutral choice regarding the Messiah. There are only two eternal destinies, and each is based on acceptance or rejection of Jesus Christ. The soldiers mocked Jesus. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand and knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. The crucifixion. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall. But after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. And sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Above his head, they placed the written charge against him. "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him, for he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" In the same way, the robbers who were crucified with him also heaped insults on him. The death of Jesus. From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness came over all the land. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing there heard this, they said, "He's calling Elijah." Immediately, one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a stick, and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rock split. The tombs broke open, and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs, and after Jesus' resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, "Surely he was the Son of God." Many women were there, watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joses, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. The burial of Jesus. As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. The guard at the tomb. The next day, the one after preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "we remember that while he was alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first." "Take a guard," Pilate answered. "Go and make the tomb as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting the guard. In fulfillment of Psalm 22, the soldiers gambled for his clothes by casting lots, the ancient equivalent of rolling dice or flipping a coin. Above his head on the cross, they placed a sign with this accusation: "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." In an ironic sense, this is the full revelation of the theme that Matthew has pursued throughout his gospel. On the cross, Jesus was named King. Finally, Jesus gave up his spirit and died. At that moment, the curtain of the sanctuary was torn in two. This refers to the veil separating the holy place from the most holy place. Since the curtain was torn from top to bottom, clearly God did the tearing. In an instant, full access to God's holy presence through Jesus Christ was granted. No further sacrifices were necessary. Truly, as Jesus declared, "It is finished." His crucifixion was so sad. A lot of the disciples weren't even there. The women were there, though. They were faithful to come. But the crowd was heckling Jesus, saying, "If you say you're the Son of God, why can't you come down?" Which kind of makes sense. I mean, he made all these claims that he was God's son, and yet here he is, stuck on a cross, and he can't come down. And what people just didn't realize is that all those lambs that their families had sacrificed, and their grandparents and great-great-grandparents, all the way back to when God sacrificed the first animal. Why? What was the first animal sacrificed for? To get fur, right? To put on Adam and Eve. That was the first animal sacrifice. Think about that. Because why? Of their sin. And ever since then, God required there is no forgiveness without the shedding of blood. So we always had to be sacrificing these lambs and goats. And this time, it is finished. And God took that curtain and tore it top to bottom. And that was in the temple between the holy place and the Holy of Holies, saying, no longer is there going to be a veil between us and God. Jesus did the sacrifice. And so we can come to God on our own. And also we don't need any more lamb sacrifices because he said, it is finished. Now we move on to the exciting part. Matthew chapter 28, the resurrection. After the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. Okay, I just love it. Rolled back the stone and sat on it. I mean, those angels, they must have been so excited to be on this mission. This is the most important mission in the history of the world. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. And again, I think this is kind of a humorous part. These soldiers were strong, they were brave, they were big, they had armor, they had been trained. But when they saw that angel come and sit on that tomb, they fell down like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come, see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." Can you imagine how excited these women were? I mean, they were there at the cross. They had seen him. They were so sad. But now all that sadness is turned into joy. And I love it that he appeared to women first. Jesus, his whole career, his whole life, was always lifting women up. Women in that time were looked very lowly. Women and children were like slaves. They were just very lowly. But they were elevated by Jesus. And I just love it that the men weren't the first one. The women were the first one to see Jesus, and they got to go tell the boys. The guards report, while the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, "You are to say, 'His disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep.' If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed. And this story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day. Early on Sunday, the first day of the week, some of the women who followed Jesus went to the tomb so they could anoint his body with spices. Because remember, they had to take him down quickly from the cross before the sun went down because that was going to be the Sabbath, so there wasn't time to anoint his body, so they had to wait until Sunday to anoint it. But there they encountered more than they were expecting. An angel in snowy white clothes, whose appearance was like lightning, came down, rolled back the stone, and perched on top of it. This was no cute little cherub. He was so astonishing and fearsome that the guards who saw him were terrified and passed out. The angel announced to the women shocking news. Jesus, who was crucified, was not in the tomb. He'd risen as promised. Even Jesus' enemies knew he had claimed that he would rise again from the dead. That's why they wanted a guard posted at his grave. But Jesus' disciples, and apparently these visitors, had been slow to understand and believe. The angel invited them to see the empty tomb, a glorious sight. The soldiers who had been guarding the tomb reported to the chief priests what had happened. Knowing that they had to come up with an explanation, the chief priests gave the soldiers a large sum of money to spread a lie. They were to claim that Jesus' disciples stole his body at night as they slept. Not only did the priests promise the guards cash, but also protection from Pilate when he heard the news. Oh my goodness, once again, the priests are just throwing money at someone. Like they gave Judas money, and now they're giving these soldiers money to try to solve all of their problems. But seriously, guards never sleep. And also, how could they be overpowered by these disciples? These guards had armor on. It is just such a fake story. Notice the fatal flaw in this story the soldiers were to spread. How could they know what had happened if they had been sound asleep? And even if they had been awake, how could a small band of civilians overpower armed and trained Roman soldiers? Here we see an attempt to deny a supernatural event by replacing it with a natural explanation. Jesus really rose from the dead. The resurrection is the greatest event of human history and is proof that Christianity is true. Without it, we have nothing. With it, we have hope in history and for eternity. I love it. I mean, like you said, if they say we were sleeping, how do you know that they came to steal the body? What a scam. But anyway, let's get on to the Great Commission. The Great Commission. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, and here we have Jesus' last words. And these are the disciples' marching orders back then, and these are the orders that we're supposed to take today. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go make the disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you to the very end of the age. Isn't that just great? It's so clear what we're supposed to do and how we're going to have the power to go do it. And he promises to be with us to the very, very end of the age. With a Savior like that and marching orders like that, I mean, it's so clear and it just gives me peace and comfort. So I hope that you have the Great Commission in your heart and you go tell everyone about Jesus. Thank you for being with us as we made it all the way through Matthew. This has been so exciting. Next week, we're going to start with Mark. So come back then and we'll read more of the Gospels. And remember, God's Word in your heart is still the best way to live. We'll see you tomorrow. If you enjoyed this message today, I would appreciate a thumbs up. I would also love it if you would subscribe to my channel and pass it along to other friends who want to strengthen their faith in Jesus. I would love a comment on what you liked and also future topics you would like me to talk about. I would also love to answer any question you may have about how to put your faith in Jesus, the Christmas story, Easter story, anything at all. You can contact me through my website, which is nancyjoy2u. That's nancyjoy, the number 2, the letter u.com. You can also email me at nancyjoy2u@gmail.com. Hope to see you tomorrow.